Hello dear students, I am Professor Sunita Borde from KTHM College. Today we are going to deal with MA Part 2, paper Indian Writing in English, and today we are going to deal with poem Freedom to the Slave. So let's have a recap to the previous lecture. So dear students, in the earlier lecture we had discussed history of Indian English poetry, and this is the session agenda of today's lecture. Today we are going to discuss about the poet Henry Louis Vivian Derozio, then social background of the poem, freedom to the slave poem reading, and poem analysis. Now dear students, let's have a look at a quick life story about Vivian Derozio. So Henry Louis Vivian Derozio was born on 18 April 1809 at Kolkata. His parents were Francis Derozio, a Christian Indo-Portuguese office worker, and his mother Sophia Johnson Derozio, an English woman. So dear students, Derozio was generally considered as an Anglo-Indian, being of mixed Portuguese Indian and English descent, but he never considered him an Anglo-Indian. He considered himself always Indian, and he was known during his lifetime as the first national poet of modern India. While a student, he read the poetry of his contemporaries like John Keats, P.B. Shelley, and Lord Byron. His poems are regarded as an important landmark in the history of patriotic poetry in India, especially to India, my native land, and the Fakir of Jangira and the Harp of India. At the age of 14, Derozio left school to work. He initially joined his father's office in Kolkata, but then he shifted to his uncle's indigo factory in Bhagalpur. There, he inspired by the scenic beauty of river Ganga. So inspired by the scenic beauty of bank of the river Gangas, he started writing poetry, and which he submitted to the India Gazette. His poetic career began to flourish with poems published in multiple newspapers and periodicals in 1825. In May 1826, at the age of 17, he was appointed teacher in English literature and history at the New Hindu College, Kolkata. Derozio's intense zeal for teaching and his interactions with students created a sensation at Hindu College. He organized debates where ideas and social norms were freely debated. In 1828, he motivated students to form a literary and debating club called the Academic Association. Despite his youth, he was considered a great scholar and a thinker. Within a short period, he drew around him a group of intelligent boys in college. He constantly encouraged them to think freely, to question, and not to accept anything blindly. His teachings inspired the development of the spirit of liberty, equality, and freedom. They also tried to remove social evils, improve the condition of women and peasants, and promote liberty through freedom of the press, trial by jury, and so on. So dear students, his activities brought about the intellectual revolution in Bengal. It was called the Young Bengal Movement, and his students also known as Derozians. But due to backlash from conservative parents who disliked his wide-ranging and open discussions of religious issues, Derozio was dismissed from his post as a teacher in April 1831. shortly before his death. In 1838, after his death, members of the Young Bengal movement established a second society called a Society for the Acquisition of General Knowledge. Its main objective was to acquire and disseminate knowledge about the condition of the country. So, such a great poet, Henry Louis Vivian Derozio, died of cholera at the age of 22 on 26 December 1831 in Calcutta, and his body was buried in South Park Street Cemetery. So, this was a brief biography of Henry Louis Vivian Derozio. Now, we'll have a look at his poetic career. So, his first published volume of poetry, that was named as Poems, it was published in 1827. Then his second volume of poetry, that is the Fakir of Jangira, was published in 1828. And the poetical works of Henry Louis Vivian Derozio was published posthumously in 1907. So these are the questions, dear students, for you. You have to tell me, or you have to write in our Google Classroom, that what is the name of Vivian Derozio's father, what was the name of his second volume of poetry. So this is for today's lecture. I hope you have understood the lecture. In the next lecture, we'll deal with the poem in detail. Thank you very much.